Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a supernatural horror film, The Hole in the Ground. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Sarah, together with her son, Chris, travels along the Irish countryside. They stop momentarily in an amusement park to play and eat. Later on, the two talk in the car as they drive off until Sarah swerves the car to prevent hitting an old woman who suddenly appears in the middle of the road. Sarah retrieves the broken side view mirror quickly. She gets weirded out by the old woman's muttering as she stares silently at Chris. Later on, Sarah and Chris begin to eat in their new house. Sarah goes to fetch some tools in the basement when she suddenly hears Chris cries for help. He is frightened of a spider, so his mother traps the small creature in a jar. Outside, Chris comments that his father would have killed the spider rather than letting it go like his mother wants to do. He's also wondering why they came here without his father. Sarah gets upset about Chris' persistent questions and releases the spider. Chris stomps on it and runs away out of anger. Sarah goes to follow her son inside the large forest, worried for his safety. She loses him and instead finds a massive sinkhole there. She spins around in fear, thinking her son might be hurt and lost. Sarah then sees Chris standing behind her. Chris tells her he understands why they had to leave his father. Chris asks about the sinkhole, but Sarah ushers him back to their house. After school, Sarah tries to convince a timid Chris to make new friends, but her son replies that he doesn't need them. Chris' lack of enthusiasm makes her worry, making her attempt to convince him to sign up for the talent show. Later that night, Sarah eats dinner with guests over at their house. They begin to talk about Noreen, the old woman who suddenly showed up in the middle of the road the other day, who also apparently lives just near where Sarah and Chris are. Sarah learns that one of her friends attended the same elementary school as Noreen's son, James, when they were younger. According to the friend, Noreen once stormed into their classroom, shrieking at her son James. Noreen was quickly detained by 3 teachers and was brought to the principal's office before the police turned up. James was then taken out of school while Noreen received medical help. A few months later, it's said that Noreen murdered her son by hitting him with a car, but the friend also refutes the story by saying that it wasn't a murder incident, but instead just an accident. Sarah wakes up at night when she hears some sounds coming from downstairs. She finds that Chris isn't in his bedroom and grows restless as she finds the entrance door of the house opening and closing due to the harsh wind. Sarah flees into the dark forest to look for her son. She searches for a while, even scaring herself when she spots something moving from behind a tree. Sarah heads over the spot but finds nothing there until she decides to return home to call the police for Chris' disappearance. Moments after, Sarah then turns and sees Chris in the doorway of his bedroom. He tells her that he's been in his bed the entire time she was gone. Sarah gets concerned for her well-being because of this odd occurrence. The next day, Sarah gets a doctor for her growing anxiety upon the move to their new home. She gets prescribed sedatives from her doctor. The doctor asks about the scar on her forehead, and she tells him she got it from an accident a year ago. Later, Sarah starts using the sedatives the same night. She wakes up with Chris giving her flowers that he took from the garden. She reprimands him for going there alone, but accepts the gift and thanks him when he confesses he wants to make her happy. After a while, Sarah fetches Chris from school. Chris tells her of the new friends he made. Sarah stops the car when she notices Noreen in the middle of the road again. After asking her to get out of the way, Noreen whispers to Sarah that Chris is not her boy, much to her confusion. Sarah then meets Noreen's husband. While the two converse shortly, Noreen approaches the car. Sarah later returns to the car. Noreen spots Chris and suddenly gets agitated. She starts yelling and saying that he is not Sarah's son while slamming her head against the window. The man pulls his wife back. Sarah feels terrified as she drives them home. She's worked up the whole afternoon. The following day, when Sarah heads to Noreen's home and discovers that Noreen has been brutally murdered, her head buried in the ground, she gets questioned in her house about what she saw. Sarah zones out and imagines Chris breaking the wrist of the boy he's playing with. She shakes the image away from her mind and diverts her focus on the officer in front of her. Later on, Sarah bathes as she realizes that her scalp is slightly bleeding. When paying her respects at Noreen's funeral, Sarah notices that all of the mirrors in her home are covered in black cloth. Sarah asks Noreen's husband why Noreen thought Chris wasn't her son. The man tells her that Noreen thought their son, James, was an imposter as well, which indicates the reason why Noreen acted hostile toward James. The man also admits that he was the one who overlooked James's darting into the road and accidentally hit him with his car, not Noreen. The day after, Sarah goes jogging and stops to pick up a toy soldier that she recognizes as Chris' toy. While eating together, Sarah notices Chris suddenly starting to enjoy eating spaghetti bolognese and Parmesan cheese, a dish he used to detest. Chris becomes upset when Sarah probes him about going out into the forest, so he suddenly pushes the dining table with an odd strength in Sarah's direction, leaving her perplexed. One night as Sarah is taking a bath, she hears unusual noises. She heads over to where the noise is coming from and catches Chris collecting and consuming spiders in his room. She runs away in fright. Chris calls for her, and she answers shakingly, telling their goodnights to one another. The morning after, she calls the doctor to check up on Chris' health. Sarah tells the doctor about what she witnessed, thinking that Chris is not himself lately. But the doctor answers that everything is okay and may just be all in her head. It's then implied by the doctor that Sarah is probably under immense stress from raising Chris alone without a father, whom he figures was the one responsible for the scar on her forehead. Sarah sits in silence at his statements. She observes Chris' strange behavior and sees her son watching the television in the living room like an adult when he isn't supposed to be acting that way, as he's still a child. Sarah conceals a camera in her son's room to keep an eye on his activities at night. Once Sarah wraps up the work of wallpapering their house, Chris and she sit down for breakfast. She apologizes for her behavior towards Chris and tells him she loves him. Chris then begins to touch her face. He abruptly digs his fingers into her skin when they come in contact with the scar on her forehead. She opens her eyes, and Sarah realizes that it is all a nightmare. She hears Chris vocalizing in his room and goes to see him. The scene shifts to Sarah with her friends, sitting in the crowd to watch Chris and his class perform in the talent show. Chris focuses on Sarah during his verse and starts to deliver his lyrics in an emotionless tone. She begins to feel suffocated while watching her son perform. It's as though she's alone with him, so she flees into the hallway. Sarah's friend fetches her, and Sarah tells her that Chris isn't her son. Chris arrives at the scene along with his teacher, but Sarah ignores them both in favor of driving away to get to their house. She watches the footage that was recorded in the camera she hid. Sarah heads over to Noreen's husband and asks him about the mirrors. He answers that it was Noreen's way of knowing if James or him was an imposter or not, since mirrors always show the truth. Sarah lets the man watch the video on the camera and convinces him that Noreen was right about Chris not being her real son. Sarah confronts him and demands to know if he honestly doesn't believe her, and the man says he can't. She saves the video from the camera while she's at home and gets startled by Chris. Sarah asks him if he wants to eat. Chris touches her face fondly before hugging her. As she prepares their meal, she secretly puts sleeping sedatives on her son's food. She watches in confirmation that he eats it. Later on, Sarah finally accepts that Chris is a shapeshifter. She declares that they will play one of their favorite games, in which Sarah counts to 3 and both of them pull faces. She probably wants to use this method to bait the shapeshifter into revealing its true nature. Sarah counts, but right after she finishes counting, the shapeshifter merely gives her a blank look. While being driven into the kitchen by the shapeshifter, Sarah repeatedly tells him that he's not her son. The shapeshifter snaps when she doesn't stop and starts violently throwing Sarah all across the kitchen. Later on, a wounded Sarah awakens in the garden, where the shapeshifter is seen digging a hole, before hauling her over and starting to bury her headfirst, similar to how it did with Noreen. The shapeshifter begins to feel the effect of the sedative drug and loses consciousness beside Sarah. Afterward, she quickly escapes and drags Chris' body into their basement. Sarah gets a hold of her car's broken side view mirror and slowly approaches Chris. She turns the mirror in the shapeshifter's direction and sees Chris' body for who it really is, which is a shapeshifter. She gets frightened when the shapeshifter wakes up, but Sarah still demands it to tell her where her real son Chris is. After a little struggle, Sarah confines the shapeshifter in the basement and leaves to head to the forest's sinkhole. She descends to the bottom of the sinkhole and begins to crawl through the earth in difficulty. She eventually comes across a child who resembles her son, still breathing, and is buried beneath a great number of faceless, lifeless people. Sarah wastes no time digging him up and hugging her son. She is beyond terrified when she hears and sees countless shapeshifters waking up. She carries Chris and heads back to where she had crawled from, while a shapeshifter follows them. Nearing the end of the tunnel, the shapeshifter takes hold of her son's ankle, and Sarah bashes its hand away continuously with the flashlight she's carrying. the hand suddenly turns to human flesh, and Sarah illuminates the light through the passageway, only to see that the creature has taken her form and face. She stares at the imposter shapeshifter for a moment, before ultimately bashing its hand away one last time and escaping the sinkhole. Sarah stops at a tree to wake Chris up. As soon as Chris opens his eyes and sees his mother, the two share a loving embrace. Sarah and Chris head back to their home, and Sarah enters it to get her car keys, before burning the house on fire with the shapeshifter still inside the basement. She watches the place burn down and proceeds to drive off crying, while Chris is lying in the back of the car. The next scene shows Sarah in a university as she's studying. They have moved back into the city. Chris is seen happy with his mother living in their new home. One day, as Chris rides his bike outside, Sarah decides to snap several shots of her son. When she looks at the photos, she notices that Chris' face is much more blurry than the rest of the photograph, implying that this might not be her real son. In the last scene, Sarah is seen inside her living room, which she has covered with mirrors again. It seems as though Sarah is forever haunted by the thought of her son being a shapeshifter, just as how Noreen was with her family throughout her life. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.